Here's what happened last week. Saquon Barkley doesn't get a long-term contract. Josh Jacobs doesn't get a long-term contract. The circumstances are very different. I don't think the Raiders were ever going to pay Josh Jacobs. I think the Raiders want to take it 1 year at a time.
Agreed.
They're very far apart in their positions, and now that deadline has come and gone, you can't sign any of the franchise tag players to more than a 1 year contract unless you signed a multi-year deal before last Monday at 4. For Barkley, Barkley's a different case altogether because they tried to sign Saquon before they signed Daniel Jones. They wanted to sign Saquon and tag Daniel Jones.
100%.
And they made Saquon a big offer. Yep. And he doesn't like it when people talk about it. And he'll put cap emojis on Twitter or X or whatever the F they call it now. But it's true. They tried to sign him. They were going to pay him $13 a year, $26 million guaranteed over the first 2 years. He wanted more. So they said, we'll just tag you and sign Daniel Jones. And now he's screwed. And he can't get that offer back on the table. That's what happened last week. He's been trying to get that offer back on the table. They won't put it back on the table. He's pissed. He's at 10-1, and Jacobs is at 10-1, and now they have to decide whether or not they're going to show up and make their $10.1 million. But, the other side of it, and we talked about it, smartest move of the offseason, when Tony Pollard, the Cowboys running back, accepted his 10-1. Because until you do, they can yank it. And I think, Chris, eventually the Raiders are going to yank it from Jacobs. I mean, if the guy is that upset, and if the guy's talking about not showing up, but if he's not here for training camp, he's not here for the preseason, what value are we getting for our $10.1 million? Let's just keep it, and let's use Zamir Smith and whoever else we have. Let's just throw a rock and hit another running back and put that guy in our system. And that's what Josh McDaniels always did in New England anyway.
Yeah.
He didn't have a workhorse. I think Jacobs is at very real risk of having the franchise tag removed just before the start of the season.
He would be the one, if you made me bet that happened, or you made me go pick one where they could see maybe the tag being rescinded. Josh Jacobs would be the one. You said it right. They got a guy in Zamir White who they drafted 2 years ago out of Georgia who's a power running back and can fit that role, But I will say this, too, in Josh Jacobs' defense, hey, this is a big year for the Raiders. This is a big year for Josh McDaniels. We know the bullseye, the spotlight, it's on them. It's always on McDaniels until he proves kind of his haters wrong. So from that standpoint, that's where I feel like they have to be careful. Within the locker room and the message they're sending. And just like we heard last year from, Nick Bosa, who's the best player you played against last year? Josh Jacobs. He was really good. So that's where they got to be careful a little bit. But I'm with you. If there was one out there that looked at that, it would be the Josh Jacobs one. The Saquon one is a little different, like you said. It is. And he's homegrown, a top 5 pick in the draft. We know that he's been the perfect Giant in a lot of ways. He's totally embraced the culture. New York loves him, right? So that's where that one's a little bit more dicey. But where's it go? What do they do? The first thing I want to say to both of them is get to training camp and get out there. Get the damn money that's on the table right now. You don't know what could happen. Please don't do Le'Veon Bell and sit out a year and then lose, a tenth on your 40 and you're not as strong and you haven't practiced your craft and you're never the same player again. That is not an option. That cannot be done. I say this as a friend to Saquon Barkley, as a guy that I root for. I'm a Giants fan. I've met him many times. That's where I say get into camp, work, and then maybe we'll think or tinker with some ideas on how you can make life hard on the Giants. That would be my assessment, and we'll talk about this more. Go ahead, Mike. I know I've been talking too much.
Right.
Yeah.
But his leverage is to withhold services, and they can't sign him to a multi-year deal. That's the problem with that deadline. That sneaky little mid-July deadline. It helps the teams because now if Barkley and Jacobs are going to hold out, okay, fine, we say, Uncle, we can't give you a multi-year deal. Sorry, we'd like to, but we can't. There's nothing we can do at this point. And we went down that rabbit hole last week as deep as I possibly could go. There is no way that anyone can sign him to a multi-year deal. Can't even sign an offer sheet with a multi-year deal after the middle of July because the team has a right to match it. The team can't match a multi-year offer sheet. It's a 1-year deal now.
Well, let me ask you this.
Okay, well, go ahead.
Let me ask you this. And I looked this up a little yesterday, and I didn't go too deep into it because I'm not Johnny Lawyer investigation like Mike Florio is, so I wanted to point this out to you. But can they give him more money? Can they? Because
Yes.
what I read in the language is it's just a 1-year deal. It didn't say you had to pay him what the number
Correct.
is, right? So maybe that's where they got to try to find something here for like a happy medium to make this work. Because I will say this too, Mike. Hey, the Giants, we know they're on the up and up, but Saquon is special. And I don't think he's a car crash runner to where it's going to fall off earth here for the next year, in the next year or two. And if the Giants are going to play the same style of football they played last year, which was stay close, stay within a score, up by 3, whatever, their ability to play that style of football, they had confidence in it because why? Because they went, hey, if we just stay around, one play to this guy, number 26 right here, and boom, we're in the game again. Or boom, we're winning. I was at a Dallas Cowboy Monday night game. They were getting their butts whooped. They hung around. He broke a 30-yard touchdown, and we go, oh, we got a chance here. So let's not, I don't want the Giants to forget the value of this football player, but I don't know what we're going to do here to help him out right now. But as we've seen on this highlight right here, this is still, like we talked about with Dalvin Cook, there ain't a lot of guys at football that can go around the edge 90 yards and go, see you later, I'm going to go score a touchdown.
Here's what the Giants and the Raiders can do at this point if they so choose. They can offer more terms. They can offer more money. They could put an incentive package together.
Right.
I suggested last night that a combination of an incentive package based upon games played, yards generated, touchdowns scored, and a path to free agency next year. Your old teammate Albert Hainsworth, the year you were in Tennessee, 2008, he played under the franchise tag that year with a formula that gave him his freedom the next year, and went and signed with Washington. Lance Briggs did it once. No one has ever paid a guy more than he was supposed to make, but teams at least twice have included a provision that came with a promise that they would not tag the player the next year. That's the leverage that Saquon Barkley and Josh Jacobs currently have. But you know what? The teams don't have to go along with it. But if you want the guy there and you want him ready, he doesn't get more money by showing up for camp. He gets a per diem of a couple thousand a day. He makes his salary fully guaranteed, and franchise tag players can wait all the way up until week 1 and show up like Le'Veon Bell did in Pittsburgh the year before he sat out the full season. But you're not ready for the season if you don't show up until just before the season starts. These guys need to go have big years. But that's why Barkley is upset, because if he has a great year, if he has 2,000 rushing yards or something like that, just has off-the-charts year, they just tag him again and he gets $12 million next year, period. There's nothing he can do without the Giants agreeing to allow him to become a free agent that will give him that incentive. That's the key. You want to give him the incentive to show up and have a big season and then maybe get free to the market in 2024.
Yeah, that's right. That's where they, you'd like to see that happen for Saquon Barkley's sake. You would, right? What, people might ask, well, why does he need to be in training camp? Well, why? Well, he knows the system. He plays running back. Well, because the stories of guys not being there, like you just said, for throughout training camp and go, I'm going to train on my own. There's a reason there's a phrase called football shape. I don't give a damn who your trainer is or whatever it is. You can go out in the field and think you're working hard or whatever. It's still not the same until you're, just, oh man, there's the fear, the adrenaline, the having to break the tackles. Oh my gosh, this big guy's about to get me. Let me turn here. Oh wait, this guy's holding on to me. There's nothing that can replicate that. And that's where I would say it's really important for Saquon Barkley and his sake, right? And then, again, here's another thing I'll throw out, Mike. This is a group that has very little leverage, like you explained. But, I want these guys to get paid. I want them to be there, all right? I'm going to lean on something that you probably don't like, but I'm just going to lean on it a little here because J.C. Treader mentioned it last week, right? Or maybe it was 2 weeks ago. Where he said, I can't sit here and say, players should fake injuries.
Oh boy, here we go.
Well,
34 minutes in, we're going to be arguing.
Well, I'm not arguing.
That's the last position where you should fake injuries. That's the last position where you should fake injuries because they put the next guy in and they say, this guy's pretty good. Get rid of the guy who's faking the injury.
Okay, fine. Then you're healthy, you got your money, and you're going to hit the free market then the next year. Okay, I saw you write that. I understand. Your point's real there. There's some risk to it. But, is it worth the risk, too, of going, carries 20 through 30 where I'm really tired and my body's beat up and I might tear an ACL? Am I worth putting my body on the line there for the team that doesn't want to give me any long-term money here or anything like that? I don't know.
Well,
I'm not going to be mad at him. I don't think the players would be that mad at him in a lot of ways. So can they find a way to maybe be there, collect their money, help the team out, but not go 100% help the team out all the time? Oh, my shoulder's a little sore, Coach. I had 20 carries already. Sorry, I got to sit over here for a little while. I don't know. They might have to start being jerks like that, to make this happen a little. And I don't like to say that, but I'm going to throw it out there.
There's a line there, okay?
Yeah.
And I'm with you when you talk about a guy that has no financial security, who is being expected to play while injured. The Lamar Jackson thing from last year, I would have had no problem at all if the truth was, and who knows what the truth was, that he was choosing not to play with an injured knee because he had no financial security beyond last season. I have no problem with that at all.
Agreed.
We've talked many times about the Brandon Marshall angst that he was going through when you were with him in Denver,
right,
where you've got no security beyond this year. You're taking risks with your body. What do you do? I have no problem with the guy who is injured being reluctant to play. It becomes a problem when you're really not injured and you're pretending to be injured, or you're embellishing something that really isn't, that big of a deal.
Right.
And for the union, and it's reckless and irresponsible, and it's a bad look for the union president to say that out loud. Even if he cautions it with, I shouldn't say it publicly, but that was a bad look for J.C. Tretter. A bad look for J.C. Tretter, and it's bad advice for running backs. Running backs should ignore what he said. Now, I'll say this. If Saquon Barkley shows up this year and gets his 10-1 and they get to the playoffs and the window opens after the regular season ends on negotiations for a long-term deal, if I'm Saquon Barkley, what I'm saying to the Giants is, I ain't playing in the playoff game until you give me my long-term contract or you give me a promise that you're not going to tag me next year. That's when he has leverage, because as soon as the regular season ends, they can do a long-term deal again. That's when the pendulum swings back to Barkley. And I remember talking about this with Le'Veon Bell when he was with Pittsburgh. The perfect time to squeeze the Giants would be in that 1 week window, or 2 weeks if they end up getting the number 1 seed. I wouldn't take the over on that.
Yeah.
But in that period of time between the end of the regular season and the first playoff game, if they make it, that's the time to squeeze. Now, it makes you a villain among the fan base, but I would support him 1,000% if he did that, because that's the only real leverage he has right now.
Yeah, I know. That's where it stinks. I'm with you there too. But what if they can't get in the playoff picture and he can't ever get to that point? That's where I almost want to say, like, Josh Jacobs, Saquon, show up. Practice hard, make sure your body's in shape, and then when the season starts, go, coaches, I'm on a pitch count. Sorry, I ran up the middle 5 times on 2nd and 1 already. That was it for the day. I'm sorry, my shoulder hurts now. It's a dirty business. They might just have to start getting dirty, and it's going to make some people not like you. But I don't think people in the locker room are going to be as mad at them as people may think, because the people in the locker room understand the business here. They do. And they understand, too, where there's the human element in the locker room, especially for this position, okay, where guys in the locker room know running backs like Saquon Barkley and Josh Jacobs are the freakiest guys in football. They're the freakiest guys. They could get in a fight with a defensive tackle that's 100 pounds heavier than them and hang in there
and win.
And you'd be like, whoa, this is like a dead heat. It's Dexter Lawrence and Saquon Barkley, and it's a dead heat. It's a great fight, right? And then you can go, wait, now you got to go out there and race, Jalen Ramsey, and you go, damn, this is a great race. He's raced. So that's where there's compassion for running backs, because everybody knows in these type of guys that they are the freakiest athletes out there. And that's where, maybe they can find a way to thread this needle that way, which is very tough to do.
J.C. Tretter's ultimate message was create leverage.
Yeah.
I don't agree with his suggestion, the way he phrased it, but there are ways, Chris, you're onto something here, to create real leverage, and players do seem to be sympathetic. This is one of the things that I think has been good about it finally coming to a head this week. Other players are sensitive to it. Let's listen to Giants safety Xavier McKinney on this possibility that Saquon won't be there for training camp, may not be there for games. Have a listen.
obviously, we want him to be there. But if he can't, we understand that as well. And I think, that's that not just for me, but that goes for a lot of guys in our locker room. So I just don't want that to be the narrative of, if he decides not to come, then nobody's going to be mad. We all with him. We all respect him. We all love him. And we all know, what he brings for our team, and we know what he'll bring to any team as well. So, and we also know how great he is in this league. So that's how we approach it, and we just keep it at that.
This is where the obligation arises for the team to find a way to make it good, to make it right, to send a message to the rest of the locker room. You mentioned it with Josh Jacobs and the Raiders. I mean, look, last year, we were in Canton. We were getting the vibes in Canton at the Hall of Fame game that he was kind of on the outs. Yeah.
That he wasn't really buying into
Maybe
what Josh McDaniels was selling.
Right.
But then the next thing you know, he's a captain.
Yeah.
They give him the C. He has a great year. That's why he's pissed. His attitude is, look, you didn't pick up the fifth-year option. So you forced me to go out there and prove that I'm good. I proved that I'm good, and now you won't give me a long-term deal. You use the franchise tag to hold me in place. Which one is it? You either want me or you don't. If you don't want me, let me go. So, and this idea that guys could be deliberately disruptive, maybe that's the path to getting the franchise tag removed. Not that there's going to be 10-1 out there for Josh Jacobs if the franchise tag gets removed right before the start of the season. But if you don't want to play for the Raiders anymore and you're willing to take whatever you can get elsewhere, that's part of what I'd be thinking of as a general manager, a coach, or an owner. We're paying 10-1 to a guy who's going to be a pain in the butt, a guy who's not going to go out there and play as hard as we want him to, a guy that we can't chew up and spit out after the season, a guy who's going to rally the locker room against authority. Let's just let him go and let's redistribute that 10-1. So it could get Jacobs what he wants in theory, but it's not going to get him what he needs, which is a contract that pays him 10-1 this year or something significantly more on a long-term deal.
No, you're exactly right. It's a risky play. It is, and then you'd have to work the back channels like you talk about, where they'd have to find a team that maybe willing to give them some years to a contract or whatever else there. Certainly, but the options are limited for these guys. That's where we feel for them. And we feel for them, hey, we know the position's brutal, like we just talked about. And Josh Jacobs, he's a little bit more of a car crash runner that way. So I can understand him, too, being like, wait, no, my brand of football is a little different than Saquon. Saquon can break ankles and outrun people and do all that, which allows him to avoid some contacts. That's not where Josh Jacobs is. So that's where it's brutal.
Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.